All right, here we go. Da-da-da. And God damn it. Mic check, mic check. Oh, almost no delay, cool. Alright. Guess we can start here. Excuse me, guitar. How to get started with programming. Question of the year. How do we get started with programming? Let's see. Okay. I think I need a better mic, but this will have to do for now. How to get started with programming. It's not a very easy question. So I guess to answer this basically, what we need to do to get started programming is we need to, 1, create a goal. Create. Oh god. Let's write that again. Looks terrible. 1, create a goal. Sure, so this goal can be anything. This could be like a website, application, like phone app. This could be a video game. If you, I guess if you don't know too much about development, these would be one of the main 3 that you would go towards for learning how to program or do anything for programming in general. I guess the last one would be a, it would be just maybe a desktop application. These are the big 4 for anybody that doesn't know too much about development. Once you know more, there's kind of stuff that you don't even see or know about that happens behind the scenes. But one of these will pique your curiosity, and then once you get into it, you go a little bit deeper, and then maybe you'll find something even deeper inside that you like. So 2. All right. For number 2, all you need to do is snap your fingers and it's complete. If only that was true. Yeah, so you need to break down that goal. You need to break it down into workable steps. For instance, say you want to make an example here. I want to make a phone app. To make a phone app. So with this question alone, with this goal alone, you have one issue with how you're planning on implementing this. You need to decide, well, do I want this to be for Android? Do I want it to be for iPhone or iOS? Do I want it to be for both? For this example, we'll just stick to Android. So we can say, for Android, great. So now, great, I want to make a phone app with Android. Let's just make it very simple. Say, I want to make a calculator. See, there are many of these around, but I mean, just for an example, we can use this. So now you need to know, what do you ask next? Well, what don't you know? What don't you know? You don't really know anything about creating phone apps, right? Oh no. I hear a little singing in the background. Okay. What don't you know? Well, you don't know anything about making phone apps. Well, in this case, Android apps. You don't know anything about calculators except for their function. You know a lot about maybe their programming languages, but you don't know which one you're going to be using. So first you want to know, how do you even start on creating an Android app? So this question goes more towards, what tools do I need? What tools do I need to make Android apps? For this question, I think Google should have you covered. So let's see. I try to do a Google search. What tools do I need to make Android apps? And bam, right off the top, you'll get all the suggestions, which in this case, I think Android Studio is generally the recommended one because it has this feature where you can use virtual phones. I could show an example. Android Studio. I have this installed myself. Just installed it the other day just to make a small app. But it has a nice feature of just, let's see. Well, it might take too long to start up. Android Studio. So you might just want to search for it then. This is like the #1 thing that pops up, so you want to dive a little deeper into it and check it out. And what do you get? Oh, okay. So what you see here is called an IDE. You won't know this before you start Googling stuff, but you can take a look. IDE? What is an IDE? Okay, there you go. So you have the definition, integrated development environment. Essentially, these are like text editors, glorified text editors for writing code. So they help you with some stuff, like, I'll show you an example. Over here, I have my project that I was just messing around with the other day. And what you can do is, so the nice thing is that this gives you a place to write code, and it'll essentially do things like autofill, where it doesn't seem to be working right now because I think it's loading. There you go. So it tells you like so many options that you can call. These are all functions that you can call on this variable. You'll learn about that later, but just what you need to know is that you should most likely use an IDE if you're first starting to learn about coding, because it will help you in the long run. Then later on, you can really move to TextPad if you really feel confident, but it's not very productive in my opinion. All right. Step 2. So what don't you know? What tools do I need? Great. So you have an answer now. Android Studio. Great. So I can make Android Studio, but I still don't know anything about app development. What can I do about that? Well, step 2 of what don't you know is how to make an app in Android Studio. So again, we can go back to Google and just say how to make an app in Android Studio. There you go. So I don't really know about this site. I don't know anything about it. What I would recommend, however, is what I used the other day. It was really good. Google has something called Code Labs. They're pretty dedicated to giving educational info out, and I used this myself the other day because I didn't know anything about Android development, and I kind of had to follow this process. But since I already know about development in general, it was a little bit easier for me to know what to ask right off the bat. But I was stuck in my own chain of what's the best one to use? What's the most efficient? You know, ask things like that, and then it takes a long time to even start. What I learned from that is just don't care too much, especially if it's going to be like your first app and it's not that big. Just make it really, just kind of go for it. Like, don't think too much. Just find something that you can use, go in, and then you can look at other options afterwards. After you've already had a little bit of experience, then you can really see. Because something might be less popular, but it might fit your style better than other people. Like some people still prefer to code on Vim for Python, and that's pretty much, I can show you. Rather than using all these nice tools that you have, they'll just go like vi a.t. Yeah. And then they'll start writing their code in here, which, you know, I not my style. Not very confident or efficient with it, but some people are pretty good with it. You can watch their videos, and it's actually quite crazy what they just do on command line. But again, not my style. I don't want to really spend a lot of time learning that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people feel that way, though it does look cool. Anyway, went off on a tangent a little. All right, so what do we have here? We have a Android first Studio. It's kind of good to read into the IDE a little bit and see what you get with it. Usually on the IDE pages, they will have a they'll have some tutorials on how to do stuff, and especially what the environment offers. So here we go. We have a user guide. Boom, they get all this. So here you go. Write your app overview. I actually never went through this one, so I don't know. It looks like they have Yep. Okay. So I guess what you need to know for the second question, it's a little bit hard for me because I already know how to do these things, so I'm not exactly sure what I would have to ask if I didn't know any of these things in the first place. So I guess I make assumptions and then I assume too far. But I think I found an issue here. So how to make an Android app in Android Studio. So I mean, you could generally do Google, but it's good to know at this point. So now you need to have a choice of languages. So I can't assume that you'll know the languages. So we would have to search for Android development languages. There we go. Now we have some answers. And you can read right here at the top. Java is the official language for Android app development. Consequently, the most used language as well. Kotlin is a cross-platform language that may be used alternative to Java for Android app development. Now that's interesting, because if you're not only looking to make Android apps, it looks like Kotlin removes. So you can read these and you kind of figure out which one you want to go for. Usually you want to look at only the first one or two that are going to pop up. This one, C++, I can tell you, is not beginner friendly. Python is beginner friendly. Corona, I've never worked with it, so I don't know. But yeah, C# is beginner friendly as well. And it's very similar to Java, in my opinion. Kotlin. So now this raises the interesting question. So Kotlin iOS. So this is cross-platform, but you know, I don't know. Creating an iOS application. So it looks like you still have to use the iOS language. You have to use Swift. So, all right. So I'm not really sure how it's cross-platform, but anyway, you would most likely choose, I think, an Android Studio. We would just kind of click New Project. And then here you can see all the things you can do. You would most likely want to start with something basic. And then here you can choose the language you want to program in. Now here, this only has 2 languages. So for this example, it's kind of good to just kind of go at it. Maybe not question too much because you don't even know what the options there are with the initial install. Yeah. But anyway, so for Android. So they have a bunch of stuff here on Google Labs. A lot of it is tailored towards people that are already developers, but again, this could help people that are developers and want to advance their learning further. Or Kotlin. Yeah, so they have like the skill level advanced. Maybe you could just search for a beginner. No. Google just not beginner friendly. Maybe it is. I don't know. Android things. Interesting. I don't know what that is. Android. No. Android. Oh, okay. So there we go. So we have all the topics related to Android. Scroll through this. Maybe you want to search for Kotlin. So these are all advanced. Oh, I think I saw something for beginners. But yeah. Alright, maybe this would be hard for somebody that is a starter. Okay. Here we go. So this is how you would start. You would say, decide. Ooh. Alright, so you want to decide on a language. Yep. That's exactly what we want to do. So in this case, there is Java and Kotlin. Yeah. Okay. So choosing between Java and Kotlin. I mean, Java is the most used one. Kotlin is advertised as beginner friendly. I don't know how true that is, but I did work with it a little bit. I know it seemed pretty elegant, simple. So can't say too much though. I only really have a few hours of development experience in it. But I did get an app through pretty fast with it, even though I didn't even know the language before. I still can't even say I know it now, but it seemed alright. So now you've decided on a language. So for this example, let's say, okay, this is beginner friendly. Let's choose. So generally when you want to make an initial app, you want to make hello world. This is universal. This is kind of like the go-to how to start anything in programming. So you would want to do a search for hello world, Android, Kotlin. And here you go. Here you are. This is the search that you want. Hello world, Android, Kotlin. And actually, since you're using Android Studio, maybe you want to throw that into Android Studio. All right, so we have the first result. Here we go. Choose your project. Great. Choose the language Kotlin. So we kind of see this. And they walk you through all of the steps. You can choose the hardware that you want to use. So this is for testing your app on a virtual device. And there you go. So they have all the basic stuff. And then usually at the end, they'll link you to other stuff. Sample projects written in Kotlin. Here they bring you to what I was trying to show before, I guess. So you have a bunch of stuff here. But these all sound a little bit complicated, I guess, for someone just starting. And this is not even found. Oh, okay. Hmm. Hmm. Ah. Hey, I just saw the messages. Where is this coming from? Okay. Hmm. Hold on one moment. Hmm. All right. Didn't notice people were in here before. Sorry for missing your messages. I wasn't paying too much attention. I should pay more attention since it's an Ask Me Anything. So I've already failed a little bit. That's all right. That's all right. Hmm. Yes, I have. How are you doing? Doing good? Hmm. You want to learn about programming? You can ask me anything and I will answer. To the best of my knowledge. Sorry for the delay. I didn't really, I wasn't paying too much attention to the chat. I didn't expect anybody to actually be watching. Yeah. So normally if you want to, I could just continue what I was talking about. So you say, great, I have an application. My application, call it whatever. It doesn't matter. Tried Python. Is there anything you wanted to make? I myself have just downloaded this the other day. So if you have no objective, a good place to start is, well, we all do things. We spend our time doing, maybe watching streams, trying to learn code for the sake of trying it. if you want to find an objective, a good way to find one is to so you use Twitch, maybe you use YouTube, you use a bunch of things online. Just tell yourself one thing. What's a problem on Twitch? What is a problem on YouTube? What is a problem on X? Just anything. And in that case, ask yourself, are you curious in writing a solution to that problem? If so, that's your goal. So, I mean, I don't know about, I don't use Twitch too much, so it's kind of hard for me to say, but if we look, twitch.tv, what we can see is that you can see all the recommended channels. It's all like, you know, very popular streams. These people all have a lot of viewers, but you know, what about those people that want to start streaming? They don't have any exposure. It's really hard when you're starting at the bottom. Like, I don't really do streaming much at all, but my problem here would be exposure. So it's kind of hard to get noticed when there's all these people out here. So an idea would be you create a recommendation service. It's kind of like how YouTube. You click at YouTube and then just see. You click on any video. Okay, all Korean videos here. Nice. Anyway.
You get them.
Yep, so we have a YouTube video here, and then we have all these recommended videos. Every so often, you'll get a video that has like almost no views because it's like a starting channel or not a very popular channel, but I don't know if they're changing their algorithm about this, but you can see there's quite a variety, 1.3, 7.7, but this is all the same channel mostly. Or we got a mix of some stuff here. But yeah, you'd kind of want to do this, but for Twitch, because Twitch doesn't have this feature currently. They just give you the most popular channels. That's it. Hands down. And that's it, you know. Say somebody trying to stream League of Legends. Look at this. 109,000 viewers. It doesn't take very long, I think, before you have to go to the bottom and find people with no viewers. I haven't even gone down that far, and it's already tapering off quite hard. I already have to scroll down this far to find people with 30 viewers. So my browser's even lagging because like it's just so many. But yeah, this is like one problem. So how do these streamers get exposure? They have to work very hard, use social media, do all these things, suck up to other people, you know. It sounds like a painful process, and with all these people in the market, it seems almost impossible to do much. But you know, they're trying, and that's definitely honorable. But I think Twitch should be able to offer them a way to get better exposure. So yeah, that's like one way. It would be kind of a recommendation service just for like, you know, I think they've tried this before, but it didn't work out too well. I think somebody was showing porn or something, and somebody got in trouble. Yeah, but anyway, so you can continue here. So went off a little bit. So you have to understand what you don't know. Usually when you start off, you don't really know anything. In this example, we're making an Android app. And you say, what tools do I need? Okay, well, I Googled that. What tools do I need to make an Android apps? We have Android Studio. How to make an Android app in Android Studio. You have to decide on a language. And we have between Java and Kotlin. For this example, I just chose Kotlin. We have a Kotlin Hello World example. Okay, great. I think I just made a project and it already starts off with that. So from here, you kind of, depending on your idea, you just kind of want to Google it and learn how to go further. So I think a calculator is simple enough that there might be examples already online. So if you were to Google Android Kotlin calculator, there you go. And that's like pretty basic to find. Normally you can't find completed things here. You know, they're working through every single step just to get you to your goal. Once you get to more complicated applications, then you're not going to have this, but bigger applications can always be broken down into smaller pieces. And it's kind of an art, but you have to figure out how to do that. And you kind of learn it through experience. So you start with simple stuff. And, you know, there you go. This already starts off with hello world. And from what I learned after a few hours, you can do something called a toast. So let's just do an example of how you'd make a button here. Button. All right. There you go. I already have a button. Any component. These are all components. Anything that you put on the interface will need an ID if you want to use it for anything. So this button has the ID of a button, but, you know, let's call this, you know, epic button. We'll just say it's an epic button. Just press enter. Now it has the ID of epic button. All right. So this, you can control the text here. I am a cool button. Yeah. You zoom in. I'm a cool button. Nice. This view is not constrained. So these have to be constrained, it says. I don't really know too much about UI, user interface development, so bear with me, but this is a cool button and it's going to do some cool stuff. You go down and you want it to do something when you click a button. So normally the way programming works is whatever you do, there's a response depending on if you made that response or not. So what can you do with a button? You can click it. What happens when you click the button? Well, it's going to do something if you tell it to do something. If not, then it's just not going to do anything. So we can see right now. I run this. It might take a little while to start running, but all right, so now it's throwing up a virtual device on my screen. And this all comes already set up once you do that initial setup, the installation, and then the sample that they give for stepping through the Hello World app. It goes here. Yeah, this already tells you how to set up all that. So pretty much this is what I have after that. So now this is, I believe, starting up. It does take a little while though, to start for the first time. It's like booting up an actual device. All right. There we go, running task. So it's still running. This takes quite a bit. It could be because I'm also streaming at the same time that this is a little bit slower. But you know how when you click a button on some apps, sometimes a little pop-up at the bottom comes up? Essentially, we can just make one of those. I just want to share knowledge because it's a good industry to get into, and we can use more people that maybe have the passion to do it, but never had the time to learn it or could afford the school. So I had the luxury of being able to take out a student loan and then paying it back. But I mean, these were my choices. But I was able to do that because programming jobs can pay pretty well. So the money shouldn't be the main incentive, though. Do I code Java? In college, I did. That was a long time ago. That was like 10 years ago. So it's been a while. All right, there we go. So this started up finally. So you can click it. It does absolutely nothing. Great. So now you can see on click, we have nothing here. So this is kind of the on click action. So this will say, if I click this, then it'll do something. But you want to put something in here, but it's not doing anything. So what do we do? That is the good question. So I'm not very familiar with this, but let's see how easy it can be. So this is the main activity. So this is kind of where everything starts in the application. Right now I use, I'm mostly C# developer. So .NET, anything is what I go towards. Android development, I have a few hours under my belt. So it looks like in Kotlin, so we have these things called functions. So function, so we'll say this is function button click. This seems to be the casing, really. Lowercase first, then every other word starts with a capital. Okay, so it seems to be the structure for the functions, and then what do we want to do? So this is because I just remember, but toast is essentially how you make a pop-up on the screen. This called toast. Interesting name. But you can say Kotlin, how to make on click button. Yeah, okay, so the first thing that comes up, boom. Okay, I'm pretty sure there are different ways to do this. Let's see. Set on click listener. So they're using a toast here as well. Set on click listener. So this is kind of an example you can use. You can write a function as well, which I was going for, but generally if you want to just learn how to do stuff, you can just copy. I don't encourage this in the long run, but what was our button called? So our button name was Epic Button, right? It's at the top. Epic Button. That's set on click listener. Great. Let's say I'm the best button ever. Great. So we can get rid of this for now. I do want to make it into a function because normally that's how you would want to do things. You don't want to do this too much because imagine you have like 20 buttons. Then they're all going to be doing this. You got this, and then you got this, and then you got that. And that easily turns into a mess. So you don't want to do that. But just for this example, we'll just see. So let's see what happens when I click this. This is important too, by the way. When I was doing this before, I forgot to put show because it doesn't show the text if you don't put this. So it was a little bit painful, but boom, I'm the best button ever. There we go. So we have some basic functionality, and you kind of start doing things like that. So you learn how to do things in very small pieces. But yeah, so now we already have something there. So imagine we were making a calculator app, then we have a way to click a button and make something happen. And what do you do with calculators? All you do is click buttons. So you're already moving forward from there. You'd want to move that button click, of course, to the top text, like calculators normally do. Like, actually, I don't have to Google this calculator. You have all these buttons here. So these are all these cool buttons that I was just doing, but you click 0, nothing happens because there's 0 here. Then if you were to click a button, they say, oh, okay, so if 3 is clicked, then we're going to move a 3 up here. Then if a 6 is clicked, we're going to put it at the end. And that's exactly how the programs work. It's just kind of doing this. And it's not any more complicated than that. You just have to know how to break down the programs, and then you can make them. It takes a bit of training, though, for the way you think, I think. The way you think, I think. Yes. That was a very good sentence. All right. So there you go. So you decide on a language. Then maybe look up how to do basic things. Yeah, so you learn how to do basic things, and then bam, you're already off to learn many great things. This is like one of the fundamental things in learning how to program. You need to learn this. You have to forget about thinking of things in the big picture. You need to look in very, very small pictures. As you know how ocean waves, they keep going, they hit the rocks. Over time, the rock starts getting shaped differently. Programming is kind of like that. So you need to hit it with very small pieces of functionality, and then eventually you have a really big system. Of course, this is the opposite. That's a build down. This is a build up. But yeah. So, oops. Let's see. All right. So, what do we have? Yeah, then after number 2, after step 2, after you do this breakdown, you just keep doing research, and research. So I can drag this down, I think. Yes, oh yes. This is really nice. I just started using this recently, but 3, research. Everything you need to know about every small step. Research every small step. Eventually you have an app. So, like, I can show an example. I didn't know how to do anything in Kotlin or Android development. But it's very small. It's not too much code. It does a few things, and then eventually, that's it. This is all my code. It's done. This is my app, and then this is where do we have where'd it go? Still not used to it. Yeah, layout. There we go. So I had a full app here that I just made in a few hours. Like, of course I can make it in a few hours because I'm already used to programming and how to do all these things. But if you're ever familiar with that game, what's it called? Mastermind? I think Mastermind. Yes, this game. So if you're familiar with this game, it's pretty old, but pretty much On one side, this is the person that's choosing the color. On the other side is you have to guess what color this person chose, and they give you hints. So white is like, you chose the right color, but it's in the wrong place. And red is, you chose the right color, and it's in the right place. And you use these hints to get the correct combination. My next project, I don't know yet. I'm kind of going between work, so I'm doing a lot of interviewing and yeah. So if anything, I'm just doing a little bit of brushing up on just random stuff. But I would like to have something to work on. I just kind of in the process of thinking of what I can make. I could use a web portfolio, I guess, but I get a little bit lazy when it comes to developing websites. It's not too much of my thing. I do more back-end kind of stuff, so I'm really bad with dealing with interfaces like so. But yeah, as I was saying, this what is it? Mastermind. So I have this phone app that kind of does this. So there are 3 numbers you have to guess, and here you go. You type the guess. So 1, 2, 3. You make the guess. So for this, there were rules, which was what was it? The ball means it's called baseball. So B means you correct the right number. Yeah, you guess the right number, but it's in the wrong spot. So you can say 2, 1, 3. And there you go. You get 1 hit. So it's either the 2 or the 1 that's correct. I'm not sure which one. But one of them is in the right spot now, because H stands for hit. And then if you were to say 890 maybe, so one of these are the numbers too. So you kind of do this until you guess the right answer. How difficult is it to find an error? It depends on what the error is. So there are 2 kinds of problems that you can have. One of them is where, let's say for instance, let's see. So you can have one problem where I can say this is maybe null, right? Null means nothing. I try to run this. You can see here it's red though, unresolved reference. It's not liking this. So it's usually going to mean an error. This is what the power of these IDEs, these systems for creating code, really help with. They point out exactly where your error is. Like if you do Python, you're not going to have this luxury as easily if you're working with Notepad or something. But you can see. Great. Spinner.adapter. All right, what's another error I can make? So another error maybe would be, so there are 2 classes of this error. This code was compiling and tried to run, but it couldn't run because there was an error before it even started. That's called a compile time error. And then you can get a second kind of error, which is called a runtime error, where you're running your application and then something breaks. These can get complicated because sometimes it'll say where the error is. Sometimes you won't have any obvious error. It'll just be like a bug. So the app will keep running just fine, but something is definitely wrong. Like you click a button and the button is not doing what it should be doing. For instance, if I had a calculator, I press a 9 and instead of a 9, it was like a 3, that's a different kind of error. Like, it's not a code. There's nothing that the code will tell you is a problem, but it's something you kind of have to figure out. So it's usually good to test that everything works correctly the way it should. And this is what makes bugs really hard, because it's not always as obvious as a 9 being a 3, or vice versa, whatever. So there's always that problem. Research every small step. So yeah, you research every small step until you have your completed application, you have all your code. Coding best practices is definitely a thing. But in the beginning, it's not going to be too obvious to you, especially if you're working alone. So it's kind of good just to learn how to do stuff first. Later on, you can kind of learn how to do the best practices once you start getting more familiar with how to do things. Because when you get started with coding, it's very complicated, and you're going to feel like you're stupid maybe. Like, this was my experience. I started, I was like, this is really hard. How does anybody do this? I don't know how to do this. It's not obvious to me. Because there's always like one smart guy. There's always one smart guy that will know how to do everything. Like, he just sees it once and then he'll know how to do everything. And I see it once and I don't even know what I just saw. Because that was my experience. My roommate in college was the opposite. He had eidetic memory, so he'll see something and he'll pretty much just remember it. Yes. Oh, that's a good question. How long did it take for me to become comfortable? So for this one, I would say I did 4 years of college. After doing 4 years of college, I don't know if it's because I just didn't do too much. Like, in college, we didn't have to do too much coding, but we did a lot of like algorithms and math stuff. So it wasn't super coding intensive. So after college, those 4 years, I wasn't very comfortable with coding. What made me comfortable with coding was to actually just throw myself into it and just start making stuff. So this was, I think, after college, I took a 2-year break and didn't do any coding, which probably made things worse for me. But after those 2 years, I started studying again. I made a few websites. Like, I think there were these people that were, if you're familiar with League of Legends, they wanted to make an elo boosting website, so I made them an elo boosting website. I didn't really know how to do much, but I just kept researching stuff until I made it. Then I could say after that, I was getting a little comfortable with a little web development. So getting comfortable, I guess, is a little bit hard to say, because you have to get comfortable with certain technologies. If I was thrown right now into iPhone development, I would be very uncomfortable because I don't know anything about it. I haven't worked with it at all. I don't even have a Mac. So you become comfortable with the things you work with, and that's kind of how programming works. But it's always good to have a little discomfort, because with discomfort, it means that you're going to learn something. So you have to learn to become comfortable with discomfort, if that makes sense. But to become comfortable with like C# and what I'm currently working with, I didn't do any C# before I started working for current job I'm in. I would say after about a month or two, I started getting pretty comfortable with it. It's just, you just need to get the hard exposure and do a lot of work with it, and then you start getting comfortable. So, I think 2 years ago, I was thrown into a new company. Well, not thrown. I threw myself in there, of course, but I started working for a new company. They were working with, did a bunch of stuff, but one of their main languages was Scala. And with Scala, I didn't know anything about it, so I was very uncomfortable for a few months because it was very different from C Sharp. So this one, it took me about like maybe 3 months to get comfortable with developing in it. That's pretty long, but what they were doing was pretty complicated. They have a bunch of microservices, and it was like so many things happening so fast. So, but yeah, I was also working on C Sharp there as well. So I did have some comfort. But really, when you're very uncomfortable with working with something, you have to do a lot of research. You have to do a lot of learning. There's no other way around it. So you have to learn that it's just helping you grow as a developer, and it just comes with the process. So, but in the end, it pays well, which I guess is the nice little highlight for it. So, I mean, even if you're working like a standard 9 to 5, it's not necessarily a skill. If you really wanted to learn how to code, I think anybody can do it. It just takes a lot of dedication. You're gonna have to like maybe a few days a week, maybe drop the gaming. You're gonna have to teach yourself a lot of stuff, especially if you're doing it outside. Like if you're not doing any kind of educational course, or I don't think I would recommend paying for coding camps or those kind of things, because there's a lot of free information online. But I think recently I did see something called like free code camp. There you go. Free code camp. This is interesting. Yeah. Learn to code, build projects, earn certifications. I don't know how useful these certifications are, but they're teaching you how to code, and they're giving you projects, I guess, to make. And they have all these different certifications, because when you do development, you need to find your niche. So, let's see. So for development, when you're making something, right, you have a design. You have design and functionality. Find good ones since you don't even know where to start. Yeah, that's true. I completely understand that. So that can be the painful part of the process. So that's why it's kind of good to just kind of have an idea of where you even want to go. You need to know, like I was saying, I think in this first step, just have some kind of generic goal. Have something you want to make. Maybe you want to make a portfolio for yourself. You do something. Maybe you want to make a phone app because you can't find anything on the App Store that's good for you, or something that you wish you had. Video game, if you're into that, if you're curious about how to make games. Desktop app, not as popular, I think, but there's still some stuff like, I think Discord is a good example of something that's a phone app and a desktop app and a website. It's pretty much everything except for a video game. They do all these things. So yeah, but generally too, when you're a programmer, there are different parts of programming that you can do. You want to focus on either design or functionality. Generally, if you're interested in design, you want to gravitate more toward HTML, CSS. This is for web development, at least. There's going to be some JavaScript maybe in here. JavaScript. And then some other stuff, I guess, for maybe, for Android development. There might be some other stuff in there. I don't really know, though, because I'm not too familiar. Yes, that's exactly it. So back end and front end. So this would be the front end and back end. essentially what people see and what people don't see. So backend is where I work more toward. This is more of my comfort zone. So you deal with a lot of database interactions. So database, APIs. So this would be like a service. Generally, it's a service that gets data or adds data to databases to get or add data. Though it's not only this is just a general use case. Get or add data. Yeah, so you work with a lot of these kind of things in the back end. Automated jobs. Like at 12 o'clock every day, we need to run this job on this machine that's going to clean some data somewhere or parse some data. Parsing is another one. This list can really go on for a backend. Front end, I'm not too familiar with it, so, I know you can... These are the core things that you learn for front end design. For back end, you're going to be learning maybe like... So these are the languages, I guess. Well, CSS isn't a language. And HTML isn't really programming. So the only one that's actually a programming language here is JavaScript. These are kind of for design, HTML and CSS. For back end, you'd probably be working with stuff like C# or Java, Python, C++. The list goes on. But yeah, it's kind of good to know what you want to work more with. Like, this is kind of interesting to me. I don't know how backend would pull people in because you don't really see it, but it managed to pull me in. So I've never been much of a designer. So my HTML, CSS, these things are pretty weak for me. JavaScript can be used as backend. I think if you use Node.js, not 100% sure though. I've never used it. But yeah. So it's kind of good to say, if I'm interested in designing and I want to learn programming, then I'll probably go towards front end. If I'm interested not in designing, but you want to learn programming, then you should probably go to back end. I think that's the easy way to break it down. But I mean, just because you do front end doesn't mean you can't do back end. And the same thing applies to the other way around. So generally people that do both are called full stack, which you might see. There you go. Cybersecurity. That's one thing. So cybersecurity, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. And the good thing about security is there's always a job, as long as there are hackers. So it has pretty good job security. Because, if a system was unbreakable, you wouldn't have a job. So that's one of the good benefits of it. So it's always good to have a few holes here and there. I shouldn't be saying that, but it definitely has good job security, though. Yeah. That's interesting, though. So 2 people wanted back end right away. Yeah, I guess you have to be interested in design, really, to do the front end. There's some front end sites look really nice. I go on them just amazed at how well they're designed. And it's pretty impressive. I don't know. But I think in the end, back end can pay a lot more than front end. Because when you're dealing with tons of data, that has a lot more value than just making a website look nice or an application look nice. Hmm. Hold on one moment. Yeah. So I was trying to make a YouTube video, I guess, but I'm just streaming on Twitch first, and then I was gonna cut that down, make it into something better later. But so not sure how to say your name, Hiloyo. How much have you actually tried to do programming? You tried a little bit of Python and then stopped? And oops, this makes my computer run a little slowly. I'm gonna close this. Okay, my computer just steaming. A few hours. So you've done a few hours of Python. Okay. What about you, Mr. Jaraxis? I think that's how you say it. Do you have any experience programming or? Well, let's see what this offers. Does this offer anything for Python? Hmm. Let's see if this has anything. Free code camp. Can code in Python pretty well. C++ not so well. Yeah. Yeah, again, like C++ is not very friendly. You have to really learn your stuff to do well with C or C++. I did that in college. I remember it was so painful. I think we had like maybe we had about 30 people in the class. At the end there were like 7, I think. It was less than 10. They all dropped the major because just the C class was so hard. I honestly don't even know how I got through it myself. Just at that time, the pointers and that kind of stuff was just so. It was so abstract to me. I just couldn't understand it. Though now it's a little more obvious, but I mean, if I was to do it again, it would still be pretty hard, I think. It just takes a lot of exposure. You need to practice and really read your stuff. I have the issue of I can look at something and I really just glance over everything. I don't really read. I just glance and just look at the examples because I'm more of a visual learner. That's kind of painful to do with C or C++. So, um, but Python is supposed to be fairly friendly for beginners. Um, Apparently, Kotlin is advertised to be friendly to beginners. So if you want to do app development, maybe you can go the way of Kotlin. Eh, it looks pretty neat. It looks nice. It's nice to look at. It reminds me of Scala, actually. I worked with it for 2 years, so there are definitely similarities, especially with the way it's written. Um, then, yeah, when it really comes down to it, there are different kinds of coding as well. Like you can learn, where is this? Mistake learner, yes. That's good. That means you actually just try to do things. Um, I have the opposite problem where I'm hesitant to do things. So I spend a lot of time thinking of how to do something rather than just doing it and making mistakes. So learning from making mistakes can actually be pretty efficient. So you need to have a good balance between a little bit of thought and making the mistakes. So you're kind of on one end of the spectrum, I think, and I'm on the other. But I think if you want to be a good programmer, you kind of learn that balance. And then you just find that sweet spot and just go. And you'll be writing a lot of code and just getting things done very fast. So speed is not always a good thing when developing. Yeah. Some jobs will say they want a functional programmer. Or, oops, which is object-oriented. Object-oriented programming. 2 weeks from now? What's stopping you from learning sooner? I know that a problem for me is I will say, yeah, I'm going to start that next week. And then next week comes, I just don't start. Working overtime. Okay, that's a valid excuse. It's pretty hard to deal with if you're trying to learn programming and then dealing with working overtime. That's tough, man. I think a good place to start if you're dealing with work and overtime is you might just want to make apps for people to use. Though coming up with an idea can be pretty tough, but you throw a few apps on the App Store and maybe one of them catches fire, who knows. But then you have some pretty good, solid resume material. You can say, well, thousands of people downloaded my app, so you want to hire me? Yeah. But yeah, these are programming paradigms. Programming paradigms. Hopefully I spelled paradigm correctly. Anyway, so yeah, functional fx equals, this is more the math-based approach, where this would be like a function, this would be the input, and this is the output. Generally, this is how functional programming works, and the way they think. There's ideally functional programming, there are no bugs, because X will always give you Y, but with object-oriented, fx equals Y introduces this problem where, because through object-oriented practices, people can have variables in a higher area, which this function might need to use. And it'll say, okay, so I have this input X, and I'll give you back Y, but let me do some operations first. And then one of these variables outside is going to influence the variable inside here. And it's going to give you the, not exactly Y, but it's going to give you like Z instead. And this is like a bug. This can happen a lot in object-oriented programming. I'm sure it can happen in functional too, but well-written functional code won't do that. Object-oriented programming, there's a lot of interfacing. So object-oriented programming is like, you have an animal. Oops. Cannot spell. You have an animal. And that animal can be a cat or a dog, right? Let me actually do it like this. And they'll have functions, right? Functions, so speak. And then you say, okay, so this is generally an animal. It can speak. And then you have a class called cat, dog. And then you have this function speak also. they share the same functions, and then it'll say meow for a cat. E. All right, meow. Dog will have the same thing, function speak. But instead, it'll say woof. I almost said moo, but yeah. Forgot to add in the cow somewhere. But anyway, yeah. So this is kind of things that you do in object-oriented programming, which is why it's called that. These are all objects. And that's how you view it. So generally, if you go towards game development, you're probably going to be doing a lot of object-oriented. So this is good for game dev. Anything that can change states very often. Because in a game, like, the states are always changing, so it's running, it's paused, it's updating a lot of values for your main character, the health is going down, you got all these things happening. And generally, object-oriented works pretty well with this. Functional might, I don't know, because I've never done it in functional, but it sounds like a pain. Because you would need to create, essentially in functional, you don't edit values, you just make a new value and replace the old one. So it's not ideal, I think, for game development, but I could be wrong. Someone could correct me. I just never done it myself. Functional would be good for things like parsing data. So you have, generally parsing would be like, you have a whole bunch of data, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, stuff. And then you want to turn that data into objects. So object has 1, A, and then generally for parsing, you would want to throw this into a database or something, or do some calculations. Functional can work pretty well with this. These are two very different disciplines, though, so logical versus practical. So functional is completely logical. That's like the perfect way to talk about it. Practical, I guess, kind of brushes on object-oriented. I'm not sure what would be the best word to describe it, but anything that you just have to deal with something that has a lot of modifications to values or behavior generally is going to be object-oriented. And right now, I would say object-oriented is the more common paradigm. So most things that you learn are going to be object-oriented. Yeah, it's pretty dynamic. It's a pretty good word. Though functional can also be pretty dynamic too, because you can do some pretty crazy stuff with it. You have a function, you can pass another function inside of it, and it can it can get pretty complex pretty fast, depending on what the person is doing. But I've done this before, and I gotta say, it's very powerful, but can also lead to confusion. Powerful if used correctly. Both have their use cases. So if you look at programming languages now, I'm going to say usually a programming language is going to do one of these paradigms very well, and maybe the other one not at all. So you can just do a quick Google search and you can see object-oriented languages. There you go. You got all these according to Wikipedia. But I think so maybe I don't know too much about Python, I guess. I've done a little bit. I've made just like a few small applications with it. It's like really not too much experience, but it seems like you can do some functional stuff with it as well. JavaScript is the same. Like you can pass functions into functions. That's a functional behavior. C# is mostly object oriented as well, but they have a library that you can use in C# where you can do some functional stuff. So these are pretty, I guess these are pretty heavily tailored to object oriented. If you look for functional programming languages, here we go. And Python's also on this list. Yeah, so as I thought. There you go. So, yeah. So from playing around with, I think it was Kotlin a little bit, I saw that you can do, they have var a equals 1. You can say val b equals 2. They have these two things. One of these is a functional behavior, and it was val. This is a value, and you cannot change values. So like a, if you want to say a equals 2, this one's a variable. This one is, it's mutable, which means it can change. Oops, not cheap. Other one is immutable. It can't change. So this is fine. Then you have b equals 3. And there we go. What is this? We have an error. Val cannot be reassigned. So this is functional behavior. So you can't modify something that's already there. You have to make a new one. So essentially that's what you would do. And this is exactly why you don't really use functional too much, I guess, in game development, though I wouldn't really know because I've never done game development with functional. I've only done object-oriented. Yeah. Some pretty cool tools if you want to do any game development would be Unity. I think they're getting better and better with their tutorials. I just installed it the other day. I used it a little bit a while back, but I think recently they added some template projects, which you can just get to creating stuff. What was it, new? Oh no, this is 2018. Hold on. Unity Hub. Okay. I think you have to download Hub or something when you do this. Here we go. Learn. So you can choose between these. They have projects for you to just start off. You just get right into it, and it's actually pretty cool. So, what are you guys interested in seeing? You choose between FPS, karting. Yeah. You do karting. I looked at FPS before, so I guess we can see the karting stuff. So you just download project. It's going to download. Then you open. They didn't have this a while ago when I was working with it, so it was kind of hard to get started. But now they just throw a whole project at you, and you can just look at whatever you want to look at, and it's pretty cool. The only reason I think I don't do game development is because I'm terrible at design. Or it could be I'm terrible because I'm just not interested in it, but to do game development, you need a lot of graphics. You can't just script everything because then you don't have anything to work with. You're just dealing with squares or circles or whatever. Yeah. That's my only pain for game development. Besides that, it's pretty fun, I think. I would definitely do more. Though it could be pretty stressful if you're trying to create graphics, then you're trying to learn all these things for graphic design, and it just doesn't call to me. Though you can, if you look hard enough, I'm sure you can find some materials online that you can use. Then you can just animate them, and it's not too much work afterwards. You just actually get the graphics to do things, and it's pretty fun when they start working because it feels pretty nice. Yeah, this takes quite a while. Wow. Importing small assets. Yeah, it's quite impressive though, like all the things that they do with this engine. Let's see, what are some big games made with Unity? Maybe not big, popular. Top 10 Unity games. Yeah, you could do a lot of cool stuff though. These are different engines. Yeah, they have a lot of engines as well. I think there was another one called Unreal. There you go, Unreal. Godot is another one. Interesting. Surprised Unreal isn't popping up here, or I'm just blind. Unreal. I think a lot of games were made with this engine. A lot of the AAA games. But you need like, I seriously. This is a game. Yeah. I've never worked with Unreal though. Unreal games. Yeah, of course they have Unreal Tournament. This used to be popular back in the day. I used to play it a little bit. I think Kingdom Hearts is written with it. Kingdom Hearts 3 game engine. Yeah, they use Unreal Engine for Kingdom Hearts 3. Which, if you haven't played it, great game. Just because it has Disney doesn't mean it's only for kids. But, yeah. So this made Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm sure it made other really good games. Oh, I think this is almost done. And hold on. Holy crap, it's still going. Alright, here we go. Yeah. So generally, you could just, with the templates, they already have something, I think. Okay, it's kind of loud. I don't know how to go. Ah, there you go. You just use the keyboard to go forward. Yeah, and they already have a template for you to just start playing already. So generally, what you can do with this, sound is killing me a little though. Let's see, what do we have here? All right, we have assets, audio, music. It's killing me. So over here they have like the scene view, and you can check all the objects here. So background music, yes. Okay. Volume. You can lower the volume a little bit because this is killing me. Alright. Okay, the other stuff is loud now, but the volume is lower. It's fine. So let's see, we have nothing here. Cart. I'm guessing this is the main cart that we used to drive around. Steering animation 10. So you can see all these little settings that you can change around. Normally when you're just making a game, you would wanna, you make a lot of these stuff yourself. So like these are all scripts and it's all written in C#. These are all the scripts. This is a capsule collider. So usually when this is how you know you hit other objects. A rigid body is like a physical calculation of what the body is. So it has mass, it has drag, these other stuff. And these are more scripts. Keyboard input, gamepad input. So, racer. I really wanted to see if I could get it to go faster, but steering, the damping, steering wheel, the maximum angle in degrees that the steering wheel can be turned away from its original position. So you can change the amount that it can be changed. Max steering angle is 45. Let's see what happens if we just turn it up to like 90. It's going to drive a little bit weirdly, I think, but I'm curious what happens. Oh, I got huge turns now. So normally, if you were making like different vehicles, you would change this kind of small stuff. I can't find anything about acceleration, but yeah. It's pretty cool that they give you this kind of template just to even start off with. You can add your own elements to it after, and yeah. Steering animation. Oh. I'm not gonna hear it too much. Anyway. So yeah, it's Unity. I think Unity gives you the option of programming in C# and JavaScript. Right now, what the job market looks like is, let's take a look. Programming. Popularity. Here we go. So, unfortunately for me, C# is only 7.3%. It's not very high right now. Python is number 1. And I would say that this is because the good thing about Python is it's really easy to prototype ideas. So what I mean by that is you have a small idea, you just want to try it out in some code. Python, you can just slap it together really quick. Usually with other programming languages, it takes more lines of code, it looks messier if you try to prototype something. But Python is like, it's almost like writing code on a whiteboard. That's what it feels like. So a lot of people will make jokes about that and say, yeah, you want to write pseudocode? Then, oh, yeah, I didn't know you were writing Python. Yeah, so the reason why Python is popular right now, I would say, is because of all the machine learning and artificial intelligence. All the main libraries for this are written in Python. And it caught huge popularity there for that. Second, Java. I just want to add, so Python is probably going to be paying the most right now for a lot of stuff. Java has always been on top. I'm surprised that it got passed by Python. But yeah, I haven't really done much with Java, so I can't really say too much more about it. It's just always been popular for decades. JavaScript is also popular for the main reason that if you use anything on the web, it's gonna have JavaScript. I don't think any way around it, from what I know. You make a website, it's gonna have JavaScript. You use the browser, you pop it open. Oops, you go to sources, JS. You have their JavaScript file here. It's always going to use something. So this is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is like a web library that makes a lot of things for web development easier. Like they give you some nice buttons or layout features. Yeah, and you can make cool like dashboards and this kind of stuff. But yeah, there's no way around it. It's just so heavily used on the web. C#. This is my most comfortable language, but it's not very popular. And after that, I remember PHP. It's pretty funny because I heard it's not supposed to. It wasn't meant to be a main language to be used. PHP was used as a backend for web applications a while back. It's still used, I guess, from what it looks like. But I think I remember reading somewhere that the person that wrote PHP was saying, stop, it's not supposed to be this popular. I just wrote it to make my life a little easier. And here it is. 6%, which is still pretty high for a language. So, yeah. You look at Objective-C and Swift, these are all like iPhone, iOS stuff. So, I've never worked with them, but I've heard that Objective-C can look kind of weird. Kind of like a strange language. I don't really know too much more than that, though. I've never really been into iOS development, and I don't own any iOS devices. So, if you want to get into that field, then go ahead, but you should probably have their products as well, so you can actually work with it well. But, for me, I hope that C# gets a little more popular. They used to be exclusively Windows, so they only work on Windows environments, but they have a framework called .NET. So it had .NET Framework. It would only work on Windows. It would not work on Mac or Linux or anything. But a few years ago, I think, they came out with something called .NET Core, which now goes cross-platform, and you can use it on you can use it on Linux, you can use it on Mac, you can use it on anything, I think. And it works pretty well, so it's nice. Yeah. Other cool stuff you can do is if you're ever interested in running like a game server, and just want to play around with one locally, you can look into something called Docker. Docker is great. I think at my last job, this didn't go very far because corporate didn't really like to do gaming in the office and that kind of stuff. Even after hours, they really didn't want it, so it didn't work out in the end. But I was kind of piloting this thing. We were saying, hey, after work, let's set up a group to just play like CSGO or something in the office. I'll just run a server from my machine and we can all connect to it, and it'll just be a private server, just LAN server. And what I did was I had a Docker. Docker is kind of like, virtual machines. Virtual machines made easy, I guess you can say. You'll just spin up a machine on your computer and treat it like its own machine. And what I did was, Docker CS go. People already have these scripts set up with Counter-Strike installed on it. And if you have Docker installed, literally all you have to do is do what they suggest here. And you can read further into it and maybe set up some ports or whatever. You want to set up more than one machine. Instances like machine. But yeah, you can change variables, do all the stuff. You don't really need to read into the details if you're not curious, but you set up that server, you just go, you connect to it, and it's easy. Me and another coworker were just connected in like within a few minutes. We already had a private server going. I'm sure they do this for other games as well. Not sure which games, but if you're ever curious and maybe, let's say, WoW Docker. There you go, WoW Vanilla. You can run your own World of Warcraft server. It's as simple as just getting this repository and then just running Docker compose up -d. -d is, it disconnects from the daemon. The daemon is like it has the outputs all coming to your console. So if you just do -d, it'll disconnect from that, and then you can just use your terminal as normal. And then it'll just run the server, and it looks like you can just try and connect to it if you just do a few modifications. But I'm sure they have the how-to to do everything. And then it's just getting it set up. So this is pretty cool. Does it affect performance as much as a VM? That's a good question. So the VMs, the virtual machines, are, in my experience, they've been pretty slow. And with my last job, I had an API, which per server would take like hundreds of requests per second. And I was running this with Docker in production, and it was running fast. So there's like little to no friction using Docker, so it's really nice. Yeah, that was very performant. It's pretty cool though. Private World of Warcraft server, you can specify whatever you want to do. It's actually quite interesting. And they have a lot of cloud services nowadays, so I think now it's even easier than ever to set up a private server. You just have to get your Docker image set up the way you want it. You would have to read into Docker, of course. There's some stuff that goes into it, but I just learned this at my last job. I think within like a month I started getting pretty comfortable with it. You just go to their webpage and you start learning, and it's pretty nice. I don't think I have it on my desktop, though. I don't think it has one of the core features you need, but yeah. Yeah, you can play with Docker. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this. Like, it's pretty crazy what you can do. So I think it's pretty important for anybody that's getting into development to start learning about Docker, especially if you're back end. Especially if you're tailored towards those systems. It's great to learn. It makes testing environments a lot easier, so you don't have to test some stuff in production, which I'm sure some people still do. Uh, Highly not recommended. Wow, this is pretty cool. I'll drag that out of here. I really like the software, actually. It recognizes blocks of text. It's a Microsoft Whiteboard. Ooh, holy crap. I don't want to move that. Yep. This is really cool. If anyone is interested in, because I used to use a whiteboard to write down ideas or to try and plan stuff. And it gets kind of painful, I guess, because you need to put the whiteboard somewhere. It can take up a lot of space depending on the size of a whiteboard that you buy. But if you have a virtual, if you just have a little pad that you can just write on that goes to your computer, you can just use pretty much a whiteboard on your computer, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Change the colors, you can do whatever. So it has some nice features. Write, erase, and then you can save them. And this has actually been quite helpful for me. It don't even need a notebook anymore. Just write everything on my computer. So I highly recommend this. Change your walls. Yeah. I think at like my last office, they had all the walls were whiteboards. Everything was a whiteboard. Even the desk, you just write on the desk, you erase it. And oh man. But you know, sometimes you want to keep what you write down. And then people just take pictures of it. Why do all that? You could just write on your computer. Uh, Especially because I kind of work alone, so I don't have any coworkers that sit here with me. I work remotely, so um, it's one of the luxuries I have. I don't have to move too much. That's very not good for health, so you gotta always exercise. Yeah. Research every small step. I don't have much space next to me. I have a guitar and laundry. Though I cannot play the guitar, it's still sitting there, hoping to one day be played. Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna make a YouTube video for this, because I do want to help people get started with programming. And there are a lot of people, I guess, with your situation where they don't have too much time to get into it. And it would be easy if there was just an easy way to kind of pick up how to do stuff. As you can see, there's a lot that goes into it. So it's kind of good to maybe have more direct ways of looking at things. How to know how to create those ideas that you want to make is the hardest one, I think. Because even for me, like, if you want to make your own thing, you need to be creative. No matter what you do, that's a muscle that you need to flex. And I remember hearing somewhere that it is a muscle, creativity. So maybe some people are more naturally strong with their creativity, but other people, if they just practice it, I guess it might work a little better. I need to practice mine more as well because I have very few ideas in my head for actually making things. Though I do want to make stuff. That's one of the big problems. But you know, if you talk with people, you ask them questions like, "Oh, what do you wish that you had on your phone that you don't have?" Or "What kind of website do you wish that there was?" Or these kind of questions. Maybe somebody will have an answer. Somebody will know, like what they wish they had or could use. You just take it from there. For me, I don't have too many people that I talk to, so I don't really have a chance to have that conversation. And the people that I do talk to don't really have any ideas like that, so. The one good thing is, as a programmer, you have a lot of power. You have the power to change the world if you have the right idea. And that is pretty crazy. But unfortunately, not a lot of people have big ideas. We do have Tesla. We have Elon Musk. He used to be a programmer. but he just had so many ideas that he just made a company and started bringing everything to life. So he is changing the world in his own way. That's always pretty nice. Does anybody have any questions or anything that they would like to know? Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I hope you learned something and maybe find a way to continue later on. If you want a review, I guess, I think I'm going to make a YouTube video on this, so I'm just going to cut out and keep some important parts for how to get started and how to push yourself to go. And you can just look at that, I guess. But yeah, there are plenty of people that offer nice help. So I'll try to give as much information as I can. Have a good night, though. Does anybody else have questions, or maybe I can wrap this up? Willing to answer any of the programming questions you have. What do I do for motivation? Ooh, that's a good one. So this depends now. Are you talking about like motivation at the office or motivation for personal projects? Because I think these can have different motivation factors. No, I can answer each though, I guess. Um, this is a good question because I find for myself that motivation can be a problem. And for personal projects, it's definitely a bigger issue because there's no incentive. Like, you don't have any money coming your way for doing it. So it's kind of like, why am I even spending time doing this? And then in the end, you have to, I guess what you have to tell yourself is, it's something I'm still struggling with, by the way. So I'm trying to change that now before I get older and then have less time to do this kind of stuff. But for personal projects, you can see them as an opportunity to learn something and add to your portfolio. So if anyone ever like for an employment option later, if anyone ever wants to see the work that you've done, you won't have just a resume. You're going to have a website full of projects that you've made. And it's kind of hard for them to say no after seeing that because you're just going to have so much work. And of course, it's good to polish the work as well. So maybe you can have like your most proud ones at the top. But I think that's a pretty good motivation. Another one could be if you're really interested in something and you actually want to make change somewhere, maybe in some industry, something. It could be something small as well. Just take a stab at the attempt to get it done. So, like I think I mentioned earlier, if someone really liked Twitch a lot, but they didn't see many opportunities for Twitch streamers to get exposure, like if they're lower in the food chain, like they have one or two viewers, which is most likely them on one machine and them on another machine. Uh, but they really want to try and do this. Then what they can do, what they would need is a helping hand, and that would be like a recommendation engine. Something kind of like how YouTube does, where you don't always get offered the best content, but sometimes you get offered content that is not as popular. Yeah. So you can make your own service, your own website. It maybe uses the Twitch API, which will get the streams, it'll get some metadata. It'll say, okay, so these people have less viewers. Let's push them to the more recommended area. And then you'll kind of have a website like Twitch, but it's pretty much just using all of Twitch's data and then recommend less popular streamers for somebody to watch. And that could possibly make change. It's definitely quite a bit of work, but I mean, it sounds like something that would benefit less popular streamers, and it would give you kind of like a feedback loop where if a lot of them know about this service, even if they have one or two viewers, they can tell them, oh, this is a pretty good service, it helped me get more viewers, and it'll just make it grow in popularity. Now that I mention it, it sounds like a pretty good idea, but yeah, I don't know if I'll ever try to do something like that, but it sounds like an interesting experiment. Yeah, so you just, motivation can come from either personal gain or trying to solve a problem. Depends whichever one hits you stronger. For work motivation, it can be a little bit hard if you're working on the same thing all the time. So a good thing to keep motivation strong at work is to, from time to time, be challenged by something. So get something that really gets the gears going, gets you to think, instead of doing the same grind. So, because there can be programming jobs that can be a bit of a grind too. So it's always, if it feels like there's a grind somewhere, find a way to make it a little bit harder on yourself. And you might actually engineer a solution that's even better than the current solution. All right. Any other questions? I have all this open now. All right. Let me close that. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for following. Yeah, I'll try to maybe stream for 2 hours here and there if I get a chance. Maybe help some people learn. But I'm not too sure what else I can offer at this very moment. So, get some rest, and hope to see you later. Alright, I think I will head off myself. So, thank you for watching. I hope to